Our short program today deals with homelessness, and the reason that I've asked Tim Durkan to come talk to us today, I got to know Tim a little bit better when Lester Holt from NBC was in town. Tim was one of the people that Lester kind of took a walk with downtown in Pioneer Square to learn more about homelessness in Seattle. Tim is an incredible photographer. Not only has he documented people who are experiencing homelessness in Seattle, Tim has befriended countless numbers of people who are homeless on the streets of Seattle. He has gotten to know them. He cares about them, deeply cares about them, and spends a lot of time on the streets. So today I've asked Tim to come and talk to us and open our eyes and open our hearts to the humanity of those on the streets of Seattle. Please welcome Tim Durkan.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. How's everybody feeling? Great, great. I'm Tim Durkan, and I recently celebrated my 50th birthday 2 years ago. And I finally feel as though I've kind of found my niche in life, and it feels good. Being a photographer, a few years ago, I didn't really see myself as that. I've got some pretty tall shadows in my family, and it was an amazing experience to kind of realize that, wow, you found a niche that really fits your passion. It fits who you are as a person, and it's got me out there. Just out of curiosity, has anybody in the room ever seen any of my pictures? Could I see a show of hands? All right, I got a little bit of work to do, I see. Are there any photographers in the house? I see a couple. Maybe we'll talk some shop after the show. Before this picture, has anybody seen this picture? This is a picture of the Space Needle I took back in 2013. And I never thought of myself as a professional photographer up until the morning I woke up and David Gregory from NBC's Meet the Press called me on the phone and asked if I'd be interested in having that shown on his program, to which my response was, hell yes, absolutely, Mr. Gregory. And the interesting thing is that before that, I've been a faithful employee for the city of Seattle here for 15 years. Before that, I never really thought of myself as a professional photographer, somebody that, would be on TV like this. So when I woke up, I posted this on Facebook before I went to bed, and the next morning it had 1 million views. And that really changed the nature of how I look at myself and how others looked at me. This is another photo I took just a year later that got, that's the supermoon rising up behind our beloved Space Needle that got several million views as well. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this or remember that, but that was the super blood red moon back 2 years ago. And that to date has got close to 20 million views. And it just blows my mind. I'm a big purveyor of social media. I love social media. I think it's got a lot of faults. We've been hearing about them a lot lately, but it's also done a lot of good in terms of getting exposure for some of the things I care about. Now, I also love the gritty. I call it the pretty and the gritty. So I have taken the opportunity to usher people from one Facebook page or one Twitter feed and looking at pretty stuff to see some of my street stuff where I really find the most action. This is where I feel most comfortable in walking around the streets of Seattle, night or day, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. I just love the personality that the city of Seattle, the streets have. This guy did not appreciate me taking his picture, and I don't care. If you do stupid things to my friends, he stole some money from a friend of mine at a restaurant, so I helped make him famous. But I really love the personality of the streets. It's the action, it's the fun. It's for most people, seeing crime scene tape is just a stay away. I'm attracted to it. I really find it fascinating to see what our men and women in blue, what the firefighters are up to, and I spend a lot of time walking the streets and checking it out. These are some of the heartbreaking things that I see out on the streets. This is a friend of mine who had taken too much of his preferred drug, which was heroin at the time, and we had to call 911 to get him back to zero. In my travels around the city in the last 20 years, and I brought this up with some policymakers that I know, heroin and meth have made a huge comeback. We know this. It's been national news now. But 10 years ago, when I started seeing the signs of it, it was frightening to think that you could get a bag of heroin on Broadway for $8 Think about that. I can get a bag of heroin faster and cheaper than a bottle of Advil inside of QFC. And it's in Seattle and San Francisco, it's in Bellevue, Kirkland, Covington. It's not just a Seattle problem, it's everywhere. And we could do a whole nother talk on where it comes from, how it's produced. But I try to reinforce the idea that it's not a Seattle problem. It's up and down the West Coast. It's in rural communities in Middle America, too. I've spent a lot of time, addicts are, they're close to my heart. I quit drinking 24 years ago. And as a, thank you. It was a choice at the time that seemed so daunting and such a pivotal point in my life. And then looking back at it, I'm just like, as a young man, I'm just like, thank you for making that choice. That was a good call as a 27-year-old guy, young man. It's one of the decisions I look back as something that really kind of turned the page for me. So these aren't just pictures of people that I don't know. These are friends of mine that I am constantly trying to get in contact with, get through to them to say, hey, there's a better way. I quit drinking. I know what you're thinking. Let's get you some help. And they're not just pictures. This is I was happy to lend my photos and my knowledge to the King County and Public Health and Opiate Task Force with information that I was seeing and with my photos. So these are informational sheets that they use. I've worked with the city attorney and the state attorney general's office in terms of, believe it or not, some of these big decision makers, policy makers, have never met a heroin addict. So we go out into the streets of Seattle, and I'm happy to take some of these policymakers out so that they can see what prescription drugs, for example, have done to some of the youth over the years and how they are a gateway drug into more serious drugs like heroin and meth. Anybody recognize this lady? That's my sister. Huh? And Mayor Durkan, Jenny, big sister, she makes a really good barbecue rib, by the way. She's been using my pictures, and I've been updating her staff as well, too, just on the ins and outs of homelessness and what we can do as a city to kind of start getting at it. This is my friend Alvin on the streets. I'm going to run through some pictures here quick. I've been given the 2-minute mark. This is my friend Tina. She lived in a place called The Jungle. Has anybody heard of The Jungle? What a hellhole that place was. Tina was there the night that 3 people were shot, the triple homicide up there. You remember reading about that? Her tent was 10 feet away when 3 brothers went into a tent and executed somebody over $100 worth of heroin. This is my friend Rick. He's still on the streets. A good guy. He's got a definite monkey on his back with meth and heroin. This is my friends Eric and Bella. She's 6 months pregnant in this. They're both heroin addicts. They've since had the baby. It's been put into foster care, unfortunately, or fortunately for the baby. Eric's on methadone now, which is a necessary evil. She's still battling the heroin addiction, unfortunately. This is my friend T-Bear. He's just gotten out of prison where he's done 2 or 3 stints. He's a good kid. He was never really given the tools. Once you're in prison, you learn way more about how to get things done poorly and how to get in touch with bad people than you do about how to maintain a good job or the skill set. So we've been working with him. He finally got his very first apartment in the last 10 years where we're going to try and get him in touch with some people that are going to help him out. My friend Broadway Mike was homeless for 20 years before Plymouth Housing, as a matter of fact, gave him a place to stay. We're very thankful for the hard work that they do. Thank you, guys. Yeah. This little guy I met at Mary's place. I don't know if any of you recognize him. Him and his mom were living in a car. I took that picture, posted it online, and a gentleman by the name of Howard Schultz saw that photograph and asked me if he could use it in a campaign to raise money and awareness. So Starbucks has raised about $3 million for Mary's Place using that photo, which I'm really proud of. I'm going to end this thing. It went a little bit longer than I thought I would, but I can tell you that in traveling and walking around the streets for 20 years since I quit drinking, it's a lonely life out there. You guys can make a big difference. I hear, Tim, what are we going to do to make a difference? Here's the thing. Say hello to the same people that you're seeing on the streets. Make an effort to get to know them. You'd be amazed at the isolation out there on the streets and what that does day in, day out, year after year. You're saying hello, buying a cup of coffee, and getting to know somebody on the streets is going to lead someday, who knows? You might be up here giving a speech about how your talents and skills were put to good use. And I would ask you, go say hello to some folks on the streets. You'd be amazed at what kind of friendships can bloom. You guys, thank you very much.
Tim, thank you. Thank you for having such a big heart, and keep up the good work. Okay, our main program today is featuring Kristine Scott. She's the executive director of the Roots Youth Young Adult Shelter in the University District. My purpose, and I got to know Roots a few years ago and got to visit the place and visit some of the clients. I was really struck by the work that they're doing, and I was really struck by the incredible need there is when a lot of kids come off of the foster care system. There's just a crash that happens, a lack of support, and many end up on the streets. So Kristine is going to tell us a little bit about Roots, and then we're going to hear from an amazing man who's a success story, who is a former client of Roots. So please welcome Kristine Scott to the podium. Glad to have you here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Seattle 4. So there's some information about Roots on your table that looks like this, but let me just tell you the heart of the matter. About 18 years ago, some retired church ladies at University Temple United Methodist decided, you know, we got all of these folks sleeping in our doorways. Why don't we just open up those doors, invite them inside, and we'll have an experiment in what we call radical hospitality. It didn't go so well. And what we proved was that good intentions aren't enough. You actually have to do that deeper dig that Tim was just talking about, you know, where you get to know people, find out what their needs are, and get some skills around meeting those needs in a safe and consistent manner. And so that became Roots' goal. We became our own nonprofit, separate from the church. We started hiring people and learning how to help homeless young people. We serve 18 to 25-year-olds every night of the week. We are the largest shelter for homeless young adults in the state of Washington, serving 45 a night. And how we do that, and I call this the world's craziest sleepover, how we do that is that amazing mix of consistency and compassion that we have learned at Roots. And we've been doing this so well that in the city of Seattle, that unfortunately is not serving the needs as much as they exist. Okay, so for example, you look at that one night count data, we're sheltering about half of the adult homeless population in the city of Seattle. But when you look at it through the lens just of young people, we're only sheltering about a quarter of the need in the city of Seattle. Okay, so we have some huge unmet needs, and as a matter of fact, when we open our doors each night, sometimes we have to put numbers in a bucket and draw out names of who doesn't get to come in. So that's very heartbreaking. So the need is still very much at our doorstep. And we served almost 600 different young people last year. Very proud of the fact that we got 87 of them into housing last year alone. But we need your help, and we're going to learn a little bit more about ways you guys get involved at the end of our program. So how do these young people find us, and where are they coming from? Well, you know, we heard a little bit from Mark about foster care, and I've got an expert here named Tyrone who's going to talk a little bit more about what that's like. In the state of Washington, if you hit your 18th birthday while a ward of the state, you have a 40% chance of homelessness before your 19th birthday. Okay, so this is a state that removes you out of a bad home, makes a bunch of promises to you, and then doesn't always deliver on those promises. If you come out as maybe not straight to your parents, you are 3 times more likely to get kicked out than your straight peers, okay? So there's a lot of LGBTQ young people who are experiencing homelessness just because mom and dad aren't too tolerant with that news. The other biggest contributor into youth homelessness, unfortunately, is our school system, that they actually do refer people into the prison system. So if you get in trouble in high school and your skin is a certain color, you're more likely to have the cops called than to go to the principal's office. And that's true in our state, that's true across the nation. So unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of young people come out of the juvenile justice system after having these huge disruptions where they have no resources. So there's a lot of reasons why young people are experiencing homelessness, and there's a lot of thinking that we still need to do about how to get them on the path to stability. And my next speaker today is going to tell you more about that. Please come up here, Tyrone.
Good evening. I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to be here as your guest. Very lovely people. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I was unfortunately one of those people that spent 18 years in foster care. I'm 30 now, so it's, of course, been a while. So growing up in foster care was very difficult for me. I've been in over several dozen homes, a lot of group homes, probably about 20 different schools, probably about a bunch of cities around the state in Georgia. And when you're in foster care, you know, definitely in the South, it's very difficult, because when you're a certain type of person of color, your life is more difficult than an average person, you know, of another color. When I got older, when I became a teenager, I tried to do sports. You know, as y'all can see, I'm a big guy. You know, I'm a really, really big guy, and I wanted to play football. You know, being 16, 6'3", you know, 255 solid, you know, I wanted to play football. So, you know, go to the court, of course, because I'm the child of the state. It was like, no. I'm like, oh, all right, because they said for my safety reasons. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, okay, JRTC. You know, I'm 17 now, so I'm like, okay, JRTC. It was like, no. I'm like, softball, no. I was like, can I do anything? No. So I'm like, I'm about to be 18 in the next, you know, a year, you know, and I have no goals, no nothing, you know, and I'm still moving school to school, home to home, city to city. So at this point, of course, they kicked me out. I'm 18, you know, I'm still young, I still got a lot to learn, and I'm homeless. I'm sleeping outside in Columbus, Georgia. I'm not sure if any of y'all been to Columbus, Georgia, or Fort Benton, if any of y'all military. It's not a good place. It's still backwards down there, you know, and me being a young man at the time, I was really making a lot of bad decisions, you know, and I knew that I needed to better myself, you know. I didn't get in trouble with the law, I just made bad choices, you know. Still to this day, you know, I have no criminal records. I was one of those rare few people that never did any drugs or alcohol, you know. I just made stupid decisions. So I realized this wasn't the place for me in the South. So I decided to move to Washington with only $300 in my pocket. Literally, $300 in my pocket. I knew no one up here really didn't care. I just really wanted to better myself, you know, because I realized if I was going to stay down there, most likely two things was going to happen. I was going to make a dumb decision to put me in jail, or most likely because of my depression, I was going to wind up, you know, unfortunately taking my life. So I realized moving would be the best choice for me. So, like I said, I moved up here to Seattle. And I just want to say one thing. I love Washington. Washington is like the most beautiful place I've ever been to in my whole entire life, you know. And the people here, the kindness, and that's willing to help someone who is in need, I didn't get that back home. So when I found Roots at the time, it was like, oh, come in. You know, here, we got you a place to stay. We'll help you get on your feet. I didn't believe it, you know, at that time, because where I'm from, people don't want to help you. There's no programs in the South for people like me who gets out of foster care. You know, when you get out of foster care, that's it. You're an adult. Good luck on your future endeavors. That's it. You know, me trying to find a job, it was very difficult. I didn't know how to do a resume all that well. You know, there wasn't no programs in where I was from that'll help you, you know, independent living skills and stuff like that, which I lacked very bad at the time. So when I moved up here, Roots helped me with all of that, you know, instantly. you know, and I was so grateful, you know, at the time that I was just pretty much speechless. I didn't really know what to do, you know. They helped me with my resume. They helped me get a job. They helped me get on my feet. Because of them and their kindness, I can literally say right now, at the age of 30, you know, I have my own place. You know, I have a car. You know, I have a child. You know, he's with me. You know, but I get to do my fatherly duties in my own place. You know, I get to. I get to experience life, you know, better now, because I used to sleep outside at home in the cold. It was raining, it snowed. I slept outside. I had no help whatsoever. And since coming up here, I had such a peace of mind because of Roots. And I just really want to say, at the end of the day, thank you, you know, to people like y'all that's willing to go out your way, out of your own pockets to help someone like me. Even with Roots, I mean, every single one of y'all has done y'all part to make sure that the world is a better place. You know, so from the bottom of my heart, I really, really, really do want to say thank you.
Good job. That was perfect. Yeah, have a seat right here. So now comes the interview part. Tyrone, nice job. How about another round of applause for Tyrone Evans Floyd? So I want to dig a little bit deeper, Tyrone, into the mindset of people who don't have a place to live. When you're on the street, is there a way to help us understand just mentally what it feels like? Because I don't know, if I had nowhere to go tonight and I would start looking around Seattle and try to figure out where in the heck am I going to sleep? How am I going to avoid getting robbed at night or assaulted or whatever? Tell me what that just felt like.
It's a really empty feeling, knowing that you ain't got no roof over your head, knowing that you might not get your next meal. It's a very empty feeling, you know, like all hope is lost. But one thing that I learned growing up is that not to give up, you know, never drown in your sorrows, you know, always push forward, always be strong mentally and also physically. So, you know, I always try to have a positive mind frame, knowing that I was sleeping outside, you know, so I didn't really get too much deep into the negativity. You'll be surprised, when I was homeless, I really didn't act like I was homeless. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say. I still had a job. I just needed to get on my feet. You know, I didn't, you know, stay out in the street. You know, I worked majority of those times. You know, so it's just it's just the mind frame of it.
Did everyday people help you out when you were homeless?
Depending.
Yeah.
I mean, with Roots, you know, up here, absolutely. Yeah. You know, other youth programs, street youth ministries, you know, that's why, you know, Roots, Orion Center, those places. Here, absolutely, everywhere, you know, but back at home, absolutely not. You know, I tried to get government assistance that was like, well, we can't help you because you got to be on some type of, unfortunately, drugs or alcohol, you know, and stuff like that. You know, like I said, I had no criminal records. I never been to jail, not a day in my life. I never did any type of drugs or alcohol. So it's like I just needed to get on my feet, you know, and I didn't have the proper resources and nobody wasn't willing to help me. So it just depends on which state you're at.
Kristine, help us better understand the average client that comes through the doors at Roots and what their needs are and how they ended up there. You touched a little bit on the beginning.
Yeah, so of the almost 600 different young people we serve every night, they're mainly coming from those three sources that I talked about. And their needs are actually pretty similar to what we heard in our prayer tonight, what we heard from Tim. You know, they've had a rough upbringing. They've had a lot of chaos in their childhood, and they're not really expecting that adults can care about them and do good things by them. A lot of promises have been broken to these young people. So they tend to come in with a bit of a chip on their shoulders, like, oh yeah, another white lady with a clipboard, right? And so we have to do a little bit of work to show that we really do uphold their dignity. We really do want to learn about them. We really do care about what they identify as important. And so, for example, when I come to a young person who's new to Roots and say, well, how would you like to do a housing assessment? They're pretty much going to tell me where I can go, right? Because they don't trust that the system that's already failed them in foster care, already failed them in juvenile justice, already failed them in the schools, already failed them in the courts. They don't expect that system to work for them. But when I say, well, what do you think about a job? That's when you see their eyes light up, right? Because they are so ready to prove to all of these screwy systems that they have value and that they're more than just a number, right? And so that's why I'm really excited about our new jobs program.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that. You and I talked, I think maybe a year or so ago, about the jobs program. It's kind of a catch-22. You know, if you don't have a place to live, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to put a resume together. It's hard to show up to work on time when you don't have the basic necessities. Tell us a little bit more about that jobs program and where you hope to get it to go as it develops.
Great. So what we learned at Roots is giving them a safe place to sleep and a shower and a locker isn't enough unless they have a way to get out the back door, right, of going someplace. So that's what our jobs program has become. We have local employers that have signed up to hire young people after they go through a 5-week paid internship with us. So during that internship, young people are learning job skills, they're learning how to show up on time, how to interview, how to build their resume, how to handle conflict when you have it with your boss or your coworker. And after the 5 weeks, we have a solid sense of who this young person is and can refer them to employment spots that are specially designed to meet their needs and their qualifications.
Yeah. Tyrone, tell me a little bit about how you got from Roots to the workplace and what you're doing now.
Well, once I left Roots, I got my place in Kirkland. But, of course, rent went up and I couldn't afford it, so I got pushed down to Lakewood. At that time, I kind of started to settle down, you know, had a kid, you know. Of course, that didn't work out. It is what it is. At that point, you know, I was working on getting my own place and everything. It was really difficult at the time because, like I said, I didn't expect Washington to be so damn expensive up here. And it threw me for a loop. Like, I spent almost a week when I was in Atlanta studying, you know, which state I wanted to move to. And if I realized that Seattle was this expensive, I probably wouldn't have moved here. But still, that's not the point, whatever. But as of right now, I have one job, well, 2 jobs. I'm a professional bodyguard. I do that twice a year for high-profile clients. I'm an unarmed security officer. And I do other speeches. I just came from New York. So coming from me not having nothing, carrying an 80-pound book bag on my back, to me driving around in my own car, it's really a blessing.
Yeah. Kristine, what don't we know about the homelessness crisis? We've talked about this problem, and there are so many facets. There are so many causes. There are so many different types of people who end up without a home. What don't we know about the homelessness crisis that we should know, and what should we do about it collectively?
Thank you. So what a lot of people don't understand is when we think of the word homeless, we're often imagining just the tip of the iceberg. You know, we're imagining the crusty old guy who's sitting on a sidewalk downtown, and we're imagining that he's like a chronic inebriate, and that's what we think of when we hear the word homeless. But what we have learned from the data when we actually survey and count who is sleeping outside at night is, you know, there are families, there are young people, there are all shapes and sizes and all kinds of situations that create this crisis that we're in. And so I think the biggest takeaway I have for you all is not just to think about those older folks, because when you ask those older folks, how many of you experienced homelessness before your 25th birthday? 46% of them would say yes, okay? So if we can do a better job with our young folks, we can actually prevent a future generation of homelessness. And that's what Roots is trying to do, and that's why we're really excited to be here today and to possibly earn your support, things that you all can do collectively would love to learn more about your foundation and get our name on that list somehow. And would also love to just see you guys with your amazing record of service and community service to come in and cook breakfast. We've got all of these Monday openings. I don't know why nobody wants to come in and cook breakfast on Mondays, but if anybody here does, just hit me up later. And also just, a drive for boxer shorts. We serve a lot of young men who prefer boxer shorts, and we can't keep them stocked. So if you guys want to start collecting those and talk to Mark about doing that, we'd love to be a conduit for getting boxer shorts into the people's hands.
What keeps you going? Because when I look at someone like you, I know you're not in it for the money. The nonprofit world is very tough. But when you go home at night, what is it that keeps you going?
Well, at the risk of getting sappy, it's people like this man right here. When I get to, I guess I got to tell this story. It was it 2 years ago that you just were in the neighborhood? You came by again and said, "Hey, I was in the neighborhood. I want to say hello," and I just started crying. He's like, "Oh my God, Tyrone, how's it going? What's going on?" Like, he just caught me up on what's been happening the last 6 years of his life, and he told me just how much his trajectory changed by having that safe place, having those people who believed in him. And we don't always hear that. They just leave and we don't know what happened. And so when they do get to come back and they do get to tell us that we had that impact, it just adds wind to our sails.
I'm going to ask Tyrone one more question, then open it up for just a brief Q&A. Tyrone, I'm just blown away by your story that you just didn't give up. And I want to know where that came from.
It's really my faith that keeps me going. Everybody has their own different belief, but my trust in God keeps me moving every day. And it's motivation. When people constantly tell you where I'm from, "Oh, you're not going to amount to nothing. You're just going to be somewhere dead or in jail somewhere." Sometimes you got to kill that kindness with weakness. For a long period of time, people always tells me all type of negative things, expect for me to fall into the stereotype of let's be blunt here, a black guy, Oh, I'm supposed to be mad and loud because, I didn't have this, that, and that, So I want to prove them wrong by doing the right thing, not falling into that stereotype, getting a job, not getting into trouble, and just doing what I need to do to better myself, because I'm doing it for myself, not no one else.
That's awesome. I have just a couple of minutes for Q&A if you guys have any questions out there.
Hey, Tyrone, as a society, we failed to eradicate homelessness. And I know you're an intelligent person. You made homework to find the right city for you. You have a kid, you have a job, you do the right thing. Tell us, what can we do to eradicate homelessness?
You just gonna do that to me, huh? Just really? That's very difficult to say. I'm just gonna be blunt with you, because to each his own. Everybody fights their own demons, and you just it's difficult to say, because you have people like me that actually want to be better and do better, but it's hard to find those type of people, because sometimes they're so mentally, I hate to say it, mentally broken, they just stay to themselves. Because at the end of the day, I was one of those type of people that was like, well, nobody don't care, so I'm just gonna stay to myself. So you just have to constantly help one person at a time, and it's not, I'm just gonna be blunt with you, it's not like, you can like, okay, let's all in homelessness, and definitely everybody's gonna have their own personal demons that they deal with. So you just have to take your time and just take it one step at a time. It's just how you look at it.
And so those of us who are connected to, say, elected officials right, in this room. Those of us who
That's
know
you, Tim.
how to write letters, how to, talk to our city council, talk to, there's so much we can do. It was just 2.5 years ago that our mayor said, we should treat this like a crisis, like a state of emergency. And I really believe that. I really believe that homelessness is something that we've gotten accustomed to, and until we start saying enough, we should all band together. It's not going to change.
Tyrone, thank you for sharing your story. I'm just curious how you avoided the trap of alcohol and drugs, because I find that remarkable and wonderful.
I'm really amazed at that too. Because I sit here and I look up in my room, I'm like, why I'm not high somewhere? And it's weird to say, but I have hobbies. I longboard, I skateboard. Yeah, I'm big, but yeah, these are the things that I do. I love to go watch opera. I went to go see Phantom of the Opera not too long ago. I'm a huge opera fan. I do things that keeps my mind going. I have severe depression, so I try not to be in my mind for too long. So I do hobbies. I go roller skating in Patterson West in Federal Way every single Sunday.
Let's give another round of applause. Tyrone and Kristine, thank you so much.